Hello, welcome to Let's Talk About It with Taylor Nolan. I am your host, and I am currently here at the WeWork in Santa Monica, absolutely loving it, and have partnered with them to help give you guys a discount to check out their offices, and that link will be provided in the episode notes description. You can use the code Taylor, and it was one of my last days here recording, and I'm continuing this Bachelor theme throughout this visit, and have a very special guest that you guys probably recognize from Caitlin's season, a little far back.
Throwback.
Yeah, and then Bachelor in Paradise 2 and 3.
2 and 3, yeah, I was on Paradise. Oh, God.
Yeah, 2 and 3, Jared.
Jared Haibon, yes.
Yeah.
I know you had, so you were on my podcast, Help I Suck at Dating.
Yes.
And I forgot how to pronounce your last name. Mm-hmm. And so it's only fair that you forgot how to pronounce mine, which is Haibon.
Yes.
Perfect.
Nolan Haibon.
Nolan I love because obviously I'm a big film, well not obviously, but I'm a big film buff. And Christopher Nolan is one of my favorite directors. I'm assuming there's no relation.
No.
Oh, okay.
Sorry to disappoint.
It's okay. It's not disappointing at all. I just figured I'd ask.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited to have you on. I like to have other Bachelor people on because I know my listeners, you guys really enjoy this crowd of people. But I love to dig a little bit deeper beyond like the show stuff. Mm-hmm. And we were talking a little bit before this, and I don't know much about you, Jared. And the first time we actually met was recording your podcast. But you definitely seem like someone that's like very open and introspective.
I'd like to think so.
Yeah.
I hate qualifying myself. Like, one of my pet peeves is anytime I'm watching the show or just generally in life when people say, I'm a good guy or I'm a good person. Mm-hmm. It's like, well, of course everybody thinks they're a good person. They're the hero of their own story. Yeah. But, I always like for other people to kind of try to qualify me as the person that I like to think I am, but I'm not sure. Like, who knows there are times when I can be a jerk. There are times when I can be moody. And so, I don't know. Anyway.
Yeah, no, it's nice to get that extra validation, that confirmation that like, no, you are a good dude.
It's also nice. It's also nice to just kind of like figure out who I am in the grand scheme of things. Mm-hmm. And so, I like to think that I'm introspective, and I like to think that I like to, think of things on a grander scale sometimes, or think more in depthly about things than surface level. It's tough, right? We're both on the Bachelor franchise, and there's a stigmatism that comes with being a part of reality TV, which is that we're dumb or just looking for fame. And so it's, it's nice to meet people and have them think, more highly of me than they originally were led on to.
Absolutely. No, I totally agree with that. And before the show, you mentioned, before we started recording, you mentioned doing things out of fear. And
it's hard to not relate things to the Bachelor franchise because if I'm being honest, it's been a big part of my life for the past...
Absolutely.
Jesus, over 3 years, because I was first in the show in 2015.
Yeah.
On Caitlin's season. And then
her season was 2015? Okay.
2015, yeah. So it was Chris Soules was the Bachelor, and then Ashley, my fiance, was on there, and then I was on Caitlin's season, which followed, and then we met on Bachelor in Paradise season 2, and it was a long story we don't need to get into. But it's interesting because we were talking about fears that I have within my own life, and it really kind of is brought...
the show brings a lot of that to light.
It brings a lot of it to light, but it's interesting, actually. I was talking to somebody about this, because I think a lot of people come off the show and say it's like relationship boot camp, so to speak. Or not even relationship boot camp, but emotional boot camp, where you're forced to confront all these feelings that you have and all of these insecurities you have, and you're forced to make decisions in the moment, where if you're not inside that Bachelor bubble, so to speak, you can really run away from things. You don't have to face confrontation. Exactly, right? You can kind of just let things fade away. You don't have to make decisions in the moment, where in the Bachelor world, you're forced to do that. They force you to confront any insecurities you have, any decisions that you need to make, so on and so forth. But it's interesting, somebody was saying that, and they were like, I learned a lot about myself through the process. So, blah, 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 blah. And I definitely agree with that. But having said that, it's interesting because I never really think I was forced to face anything on my time in the show. It's all about, how you present yourself on the show. Mm-hmm. And I think that I kind of coasted through my time throughout my 3 seasons on the show, which is interesting because I don't know why I made an impression, but I never felt like I was really forced to do anything that drastically comparably to other people where they were really forced in uncomfortable situations and had to do things about it and, emotionally break down, so to speak. Mm-hmm. And so I think that I've had to kind of like, quote unquote, face my fears more so off the show than I ever did on the show.
Okay.
I don't know if that makes any sense. Because in my life, I've definitely made decisions based out of fear and not love. There's a great line that actually, so I'm getting more into, Jim Carrey is becoming very not introspective, but
extrospective?
No, it's not extra.
I don't know if that's a word.
I can't think of the word now. Now we sound like idiots. But long story short, he just is talking about life and the meaning of it and so on and so forth. And he actually says a line where existential. Jesus, thank you. Mm-hmm. But he says a line one time where he says a lot of people make decisions based out of fear instead of love, and they disguise those decisions as practicality. And I think I've done that for my entire life, where I just continue to make excuses. I'm afraid to commit. I'm afraid to really bring myself outside my comfort zone. And I've always made excuses of why, I've done this or why I haven't done that. And I think specifically with Ashley, it's really come full circle, obviously, because now we're together and very happily engaged. And, but throughout my entire friendship with her, it was always so good and so wonderful and always felt right. But there was always this thing in the back of my head of saying, no, this isn't the person that's for you. And there's just other things at play. And like, I always envisioned myself with somebody, the complete opposite of Ashley, somebody very shy and quiet and keeps to himself with not a small life. I don't want to describe Rhode Island as a small life, but slower pace and more relaxed. And Ashley is the complete opposite of that. And so I think I was always afraid to really dive into a relationship with Ashley, not only because of that, but for other things as well. And I'm definitely afraid of success. It's interesting. I think a lot of people and myself as well, I'm afraid of failure, but I'm also very afraid of success because I'm afraid of it working out and then somebody else finding out that maybe I'm not good enough. And I think that was always a fear of mine. And it's not a coincidence that I had been single for quite some time, where I was on these shows for a while, and then even coming off these shows, still single. And it definitely was this terrified side of me that I was just really scared that I wasn't going to be good enough, because on my time in the show, Ashley, my fiance now, just had this very high...
You were very much up on a pedestal.
Yes, to her.
Yeah.
And I know I'm not that guy.
Yeah.
I know...
You're like, no, that's not me. I'm just going to disappoint you.
Totally. I know I'm going to disappoint her. And I know that I'm just not that guy, because I live in my body and my mind every day. So I know all the horrible thoughts that enter my mind. I know all the things, all the mistakes I make, and everybody does, right? And so everybody, you are your own worst critic. And so I think with that, she had just this idea of who I was as a man. And while I try to be that person, I know that I fail because I'm not perfect. And so I think that was always an insecurity of mine of opening myself up to Ashley and then having her realize, never mind. He's not that guy. He's not as good as I thought he was. And the only way to keep those appearances up is to keep people at a distance. And I've always pushed the people that I care about most away, for the simple fact I like them having I like them, not even an idea, but I like them seeing me for who I am and who I try to be. And then just not letting my walls down, so they, they have that image of me in my head. And it's been a constant theme in my life, not only even before I started dating Ashley. With I've been on dates, I've talked to girls, and it was always it's so sad to say, but I would always subconsciously, I never realized it till now when I start like thinking, looking inward, is that I would always leave them wanting more. And I think it was a defense mechanism.
Game strategy, but it was also a way to also like deflect opening up.
Totally. But it wasn't a strategy that I ever really thought of until I started, settling down with Ashley. And then not even settling down with Ashley, but like talking to her, committing, talking about my feelings, talking about who I am as a man. And then I started really kind of like, all right, well, who am I as a man? And I started thinking about the past and everything that brought me to the person that I am today. And that's exactly what I realized, that what I'm very good at is I'm very good at giving off a good first impression. I will say that about myself, is that like I do find myself being a conversationalist, and I like engaging people at first impressions so they can have a good idea of, or like they think of me very nicely. And so,
like how after I meet you for the first time, I'm like, oh, like you seem very cool. Like you're very introspective and very open and welcoming.
And I like that people think of that me in that way. So like, I just, after that, I just start pushing them away. And like, I can't tell me how many times I've been on a date or like 2 dates that have gone really well. And then I'll just start to fade away because I'm just afraid of commitment, or I don't want them to find out that like, nope, I still haven't figured my shit out. Like you think that I do have everything figured out, but I really don't.
Yeah.
And so another great line that I really like is, like what we do in the world is we try to put this persona of who we are out there. Like I want to show people that I'm confident and funny and caring and intelligent and able to articulate my words. And that's like the Wizard of Oz. Like we put this facade out in the world. And then in actuality, we're all just the sweaty guy behind the curtain trying to desperately hold everything up because we have nothing figured out. And we're just trying to work everything at once and trying not to break anything. And like just one little slip and it's like going to come all crashing down. It's a very interesting analogy that I've always enjoyed.
Yeah. No, it's a good one.
Yeah.
So before we get any deeper into this, I just want to take a quick break to share something with you listeners. I've recently been using this app called Poshmark. It's a free download, and they carry all kinds of fashion in women's, kids, and men. Instead of buying things new, you can actually shop from millions of closets across America. And you guys know I freaking love thrift shopping. It's my jam. And Poshmark has so many brands. Some of my favorites are on there, like Forever 21 and H&M. But then I can also shop more like designer brands that I wouldn't usually purchase from because it's so expensive. But Poshmark has great deals. So then I'm able to kind of treat myself a little bit. Something, a little bit more expensive. But the shipping is super easy for both the seller and the buyer. There's incredibly fast shipping. If you see something that you want, you can make the seller an offer, and then it's shipped right to your door. And really exciting, you guys, the listeners of Let's Talk About It, get $5 off your first purchase. All you have to do is enter referral code Taylor when you sign up. That's referral code Taylor for $5 off your first purchase at Poshmark. So you guys should download the app and get shopping. So I want to ask you where you think this all comes from. Where you think, if you, as you look back at like all this dating that you did and where you find that you were not only fearful of failure, but also of succeeding and wanting people to have this image of you, like, can you pinpoint when you think back where you first felt that desire to have someone at a distance?
I think it does really kind of go back to the way you were brought up and everything that was instilled on you at a younger age. Yeah. And because throughout high school, I was overweight. I was never. I didn't know that. No, yeah, I was never really picked on that badly, comparably to other people. Yeah,
but you were still picked on.
But I get bullied. But I was like in that middle ground of like, I would play sports, but I wasn't that good at sports because I was still, I didn't hit my peak in high school. I didn't start really getting good into sports until after high school. But like, I'll never forget one time in I think it was junior year. And like I played football and everybody, you know, quote unquote, bust balls, jokes around, you know, makes fun of each other. It's just kind of like the environment in the locker room. But I remember, I would always mask it. I would never let anybody know that it actually bothered me because I wanted to fit in, you know? So if anybody picked on me, like, oh, no, that's funny. Oh, no, we're friends.
Yeah.
Even though I'd never hang out with these people outside of school. It would only be within.
And if you showed that it actually hurt your feelings, then you would just get picked on even more.
Even more, right? They would just go harder. And so I'll never forget, the football team went out to, I think it was Hooters, you know, as you do in high school.
As you do in high school.
As you do in high school, you go out to Hooters. And I couldn't go. And I remember I got a phone call from a guy at the football team. I didn't pick up, he left a message, but he was just like, he was saying how happy everybody was that I couldn't be there. And then they told me that they made a circle of hate about me. So I wasn't there, but apparently it was true because they were talking about the next day. And like, apparently, like, they'd go around the table and they'd say one thing they hated about me. And like, I remember one person was like, I hate how he wants to be like George Costanza from Seinfeld. And like, so it was all these like, I know, because I loved Seinfeld and I always quote it as a kid, still do to this day. But it'd be so interesting because I remember how much that hurt me, and I would never say anything because I wanted to make it seem like it wouldn't bother me, and I was totally fine with it, and you guys can joke around. I know we're just, you know, making fun of each other, but internally, God, it crushed me.
That's a little bit more than just poking fun at someone else.
No, that was definitely the worst of it. Yeah. Totally. But it was hard. But I remember this other kid in the locker room. We played football together, and he was like a cool kid, and he definitely hated me for some reason. Couldn't tell why, but I would always try to be like nice to him, kill him with kindness type thing. And like play it off as it didn't bother me. But man, I remember like he would just fucking like, I remember I would open my locker and he would just take my shit and like throw it on the ground, and like I would try to laugh it off as if like I fit in, but I knew that he was just bullying me.
Yeah.
So anyway, shit like that would bother me all the time. So I think at a young age, for me, like I was always scared of people just hating me, and like girls not wanting to be with me. For example, my last name's Haibon, but it's also pronounced Haibon, depending, like it's fine either way. But what rhymes with hay?
Bay?
Gay.
Gay.
So
clearly I'm not a good bully.
No, yeah. So like so we would always like, you know, it's high school boys. So like my last name throughout high school was Gaybon. And like girls started calling me Gaybon because I was just like that guy, you know, like where I was very comfortable around women because I was always friends. I was always being in the friend zone with them because I just wasn't really that handsome. And so I think I just was installed to me at a young age that I was never that guy. I think I was never that guy. I was never the guy that women wanted to be with, guys wanted to be friends with. I was never the center of attention. And I think I got that in Paradise. And I think I was terrified of letting people know that no, inside I'm actually still that fat kid.
That's exactly what I was just going to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think I was always scared to be with Ashley because Ashley, the cool thing about Ashley is she's the same exact way. I don't mean to like continue talking about her, but obviously she's my fiance, very impactful part of my life. And I never knew that because Ashley she's a Kardashian, you know, she's beautiful and she's funny and she's super down to earth and like the most chill girl you ever meet. And that's why we became such good friends, but she's still this like, you know,
in your eyes, she is at the same as what she was making you to be.
Totally, right? And I was like, I can't fucking date this girl. I'm a kid from Rhode Island who is still trying to figure out his shit. And like, I still don't know how to talk to women, and I still don't know how to, you know, woo somebody. And I mean, I got lucky that Ashley's like very much like myself in that way. So that's why we hit it off very early on, but still I was very hesitant to date her for a multitude of reasons. But it's just, interesting. I think that's where like my fear comes from is installed in a young age of like being just very insecure about the person I was. And, you know, worrying that people, would make fun of me, hate me.
Yeah. Because even though like your outer appearance changed, you still were dealing with those insecurities inside, and all those messages that you received were internalized. And so even though your outside's changed and maybe you weren't necessarily the fatter kid anymore, getting that attention was still really weird to receive because you didn't know how to receive it.
Yeah, I didn't know how to receive it. And I also, I didn't know how to deal with it. And I think I just dealt with it the best way I could. Because it was the first time, I'll never forget when I was on The Bachelor, it was the first time where, like, people were talking about me, you know? Mm-hmm. Like, I remember a couple of years, so, like, I was on the show when I was 26. And so probably from, like, 23 to 26 before I got on the show, I started really coming to my own. I was in a long-term relationship when I was 19 to about 22, 23. And I think that taught me a lot. And I grew up a lot during that period, being with somebody for that long and thinking about the future and, like, you know, learning about what it's like to be in a relationship, so on and so forth. And then a couple of years before I was on the show, I was single. And I think that was when I was, like, getting to my most confident, feeling really good about myself. Because, you know, I would start working out and, you know, I was, I think I was bartending at the time, still trying to figure it out. But, like, you know, bartending, you're just in the midst of people. You make lots of friends.
Socializing a lot more.
Totally. And so it's interesting because I think, God, it's so weird. Life's funny because, like, I felt like I was at my most confident before I went on the show, and then, like, I got all this attention, and I kind of, like, started regressing into my insecurities a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
That makes sense, because I think part of you was likely rejecting that, because even though you might have been at your most confident, you still had those layers of insecurities.
Yeah.
And they were being triggered by the attention.
Yeah. I also think, like, when I was at my most confident before the show, I was kind of like a big fish in a small pond, where it was just like my group of friends, you know, the restaurant that I worked at. And then that was really it. It was a very small world for me, which I was very happy about. I don't need a very big world. I'm from Rhode Island, born and raised. Like, if anything is more than 5 minutes away from me, it's just too far. And so I think once I started getting attention on, like, a grander scale, I was like, no, I'm not that guy.
Yeah.
Like, you know, and what I do is I also put people on a pedestal. So, like, on my season, Sean Booth was the one that ended up getting engaged to Caitlin, and Ben Higgins obviously became the Bachelor, and Nick is obviously became the Bachelor, very polarizing figure. And I remember, like, being lumped into those guys kind of, and I was like, I am not those guys. Like, I can't compete. I can't compete.
Yeah.
And so it's intimidating being in this world and having to, like, measure yourself up against other people. And then what happens is like society measures you up against other people too.
It's the weirdest thing, I think, both for the guys and the girls on the show, because it does become this huge comparison thing, and any insecurity that you have will get triggered. And it's like really it's like you're just put under a huge microscope. And yeah, any little feelings that you might have in, like, a small group of people are just so exaggerated when you're on the show. Not only because it's, you know, a larger group of people, but then just the fact that all of America has opinions on it.
Totally.
It's a weird thing.
It's such a weird thing. And it's, you know, obviously you don't want to cater to people, to strangers that you don't know, who just leave stupid comments on social media or just say dumb things in the news.
Yeah.
But it's impossible. You know, we're all just human beings, and we care what people think of us.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I think I try to do the best I can to ignore the noise, so to speak, but it's just impossible. It's interesting.
Now, did you ever, before the show, enter into any kind of therapy? Like in high school or?
No, I entered it. So after my long-term relationship was also my first girlfriend. So my first girlfriend was at 19, and we dated until about 23. And then I remember I was the one who broke up with her. And there was a lot of reasons why, but she's wonderful. She's amazing. But I remember months after we broke up, just having regret about ending the relationship, because I think at a young age you start not making up excuses, but, like, exaggerating why things aren't working out.
Yeah.
And like almost looking for an excuse to break up.
Well, and that could also partially be part of the, accepting the love we think we deserve. And
True.
Figuring and kind of pushing that back and being like, no, like I don't, in a way like self-sabotage.
No, I agree. And it's interesting because I am a big superhero fan. I know this is random, but I'll explain why. My favorite superhero of all time is Superman. Mm-hmm. But I also love Batman. I love Spider-Man. I love all the comic book heroes.
But the favorite is Superman.
Favorite Superman of all time. When I first saw the 1978 Christopher Reeve Superman and he's flying around in the blue suit, the red cape, I was like, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen in my entire life. Yeah. But the reason I bring that up is because when you say, we accept the love we think we deserve, it's interesting that I always idolize these people who always, in the comic books at least, pushed away their significant others because they, it was for different reasons, obviously, for like, they didn't want them to get hurt. If anybody found out their alter ego, so on and so forth.
It's basically that they would be a burden on this other person.
Exactly. And it's interesting when I think back about when I was younger and I used to idolize people and like, they would want them to be happy, but they knew they'd be happier without them. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if that has anything in my brain, but I'm literally just spitting words at this point.
No, it sounds like it.
Yeah.
I mean, is that something that you ever like sat on and like thought over?
A little bit. The fact that Superman doesn't want to be with Lois Lane because he wants her to be able to live a normal life, and he knows that he could never have that. He can never sit down because as long as there's need in the world, he has to have other priorities. But I think that has a little bit to do with it. But I also think at a very young age for me, just humbleness was like very installed in me. My parents did a very good job with that. I'm very lucky to have wonderful parents who just early on would always try to teach me to do the right thing and manners and so on and so forth. But what they would also teach me, and specifically my dad would teach me, is that like he's like, listen, you also have to accept the fact that there's always going to be someone taller and somebody stronger and bigger and faster and smarter. And that's just the way life is. And like you should try to do the best you can, but understand that you can only do so much.
Yeah.
And so I think that always just stuck with me for some reason, and realizing that like, the people that I care about most, maybe there is somebody better out there for them. Maybe they could be happier. And so I think specifically over the past like 6 or 7 months, I've really tried to just, just stay confident within myself and just kind of try to let go of my insecurities, because I know that they'll, at the end of the day, just consume me and ruin my life, and realize that I can bring joy and happiness to somebody's life.
Yeah, you may not be the tallest or the smartest or the fastest, but that also doesn't take away from your tallness, your smartness, your fastness.
Totally. And so, like, it's interesting. I think everybody needs some of these moments. I talk about it. I talked about it on another podcast quickly, but I had a moment where I was at an event with Nick, and there was like a red carpet event, and there was like a 15-second clip that I saw on YouTube of us. And I was like, oh, shit, let me see this. And so I clicked on it, and I saw myself next to Nick, and Nick's a great-looking guy. He was the Bachelor. Has a lot of things going for him. And I saw myself next to him, and I was like, I look good. Like, I know that sounds weird, but I was like, I fit in. Like, I look good next to Nick. Like, it's not like I was looking at the two of us, and I was like, it's not like he's so much better looking than me. Like, we're like equal. And I remember I had that moment. I was like, Jared, you need to tell yourself this more often and be like, no, you can do this. Like, you're good looking, and you have a lot of things going for you, and you are not perfect, and you make so many mistakes, and you need to get better and learn, but you're okay. And don't ever forget that, because I think, like I said, especially in this world where you're just surrounded by all these people who are like always put on a pedestal, right? Like even like someone like Ben Higgins, who's wonderful, like the perfect Ben. Imagine being labeled that way.
Yeah, that's a lot of pressure.
So much pressure when you know you're not perfect.
Yeah.
And so it's just, I don't know. But it's interesting. I don't know.
Yeah. No, you're like...
I'm all over the place right now. I'm
going
off the rails.
No, you're not at all. But you're like, throwing it off like you're not saying anything. But like what you're saying has a lot of depth. It has a lot of validity. And I think it's really important stuff for you to like reflect on and to remember. And I don't think that you're alone in that.
Yeah. Oh, no, I definitely don't think I'm alone in that, which is very comforting, is that I feel like a lot of people go through the same thing I go through, which is you have a lot of insecurities. You have a lot of doubts about yourself. We're human, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so...
So you said that you did go to therapy.
Oh, yeah, sorry. So after that breakup that I had, I ended up, I just had a lot of regret and wondering what I was going to do with my life. And was I going to did I give up on love too easily? You know, but was I making excuses? And then I just kind of went in this hole for a little while of trying to think of who I was and the man I wanted to be. And so, I went to go see therapy. And she was wonderful. I went for like a year. And it was just great to go there and, talk about everything and anything, really. Everything I was feeling sad about, all of the fears that I had. And to be able to just express that without judgment in a safe space and to get it off my chest. It's amazing how you're just able to say something and you immediately feel better. Because like a lot of times that's the great thing about friends and family, because you need to be able to just, say things and get like all these bad thoughts out of your head. And then I immediately feel better. Like there'll be times where I'm just like feeling down and I can't exactly pinpoint why I'm feeling sad, but I'm just kind of like in a funk. And then I'll just call like either my mom or like I'll call one of my best friends and just like, I don't know, kind of like not even vent, because I have almost nothing to vent about. Express just anything that I'm feeling, and then like the topic will change and we'll start laughing, we'll start talking about other things, then I'll get off the phone and I'll immediately feel better and still look back upon that time when I was in a funk and be like, I have no idea why I was so sad, but I just was, and I talked to somebody and now I feel better.
Yeah. It's funny how that works.
It is funny how that works, because it's funny because you can't exactly know what's wrong. That's the issue. Like sometimes I have issues trying to figure out what is it exactly that's bothering me. See, and sometimes like I can't figure it out, because I'll think of something that's bothering me and then I'm like, no, it's not that big of a deal. Like I can get over that. I don't know why it's bothering me so much. I don't know. But that's the interesting part about being engaged right now and being in this very committed and emotional relationship, is that like, God, we just talk through so many things.
Communication is important.
It's very important, and I'm very lucky that I'm with somebody that I've grown a rapport with and have this very strong foundation with, where we can just feel comfortable talking about things. And still, sometimes I'm very reluctant to like say it immediately off the bat. Like she gets very mad at me when I'm like, I'm fine. Yeah. She's like, I know you're not fine.
Yeah.
But the reason I'm saying that is because I can't really tell why I'm sad or upset. Like I'm like, I don't know, Ashley. I sometimes, and then like I'll start talking, and then like something will come out and be like, oh, that was why.
Yeah.
It's very, God, communication's key. It really
is. It is. Yeah. And maybe a potential reframe for I'm fine is just, I don't know.
Yeah. No, that's a good idea. Maybe I should say I don't know.
Because the I'm fine is like a arm fully extended, like, I'm fine. Leave me alone. I'm good. Yeah. Like, don't want to talk about it. It's like, it's shutting off.
Yeah.
Whereas like, what's wrong? I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know what's wrong. No, that's good. Cause at least it's like, I don't know is like a opening a door to be like, I don't know. Maybe you should come on in and we'll figure this stuff out together.
Yeah. Like, I don't know. Thank you for noticing.
Yeah.
And like, can we talk about it? Because I don't know.
But it's hard, isn't it? Difficult. And I feel like a lot of people go through this too, where you're in a relationship and you don't want to be almost a burden. Like I don't want, that's the biggest, and I think a lot of people, and you even just smirked, so I'm sure you've gone through it as well, where like,
I literally just talked with Dean about this. We had a long conversation. He was on the pod 2 episodes ago. And he very much struggled with opening up to people, because he felt like him sharing his story or his struggles with other people meant that he was now burdening them. And I wholeheartedly disagreed. Because I think it allows the other person an opportunity to connect with you, and it gives you an opportunity to connect with someone else.
I agree. I totally agree. And it's something that I think a lot of guys go through, where they're unwilling to like, because in society, men are supposed to be this macho, like, I'm fine, I'm the solid ground here.
But it's okay to also have emotions as a man.
Totally. Exactly. But I think as a man, it's just very difficult to show that for the simple reason of like, it's kind of like the way we're brought up and that was instilled on us. So, but I do think that's changing for the better, obviously. And I think like the next generation of men, like the guys who are in their formative years, high school, I think they'll be far more open to talking about their emotions because that's kind of like where society is going to. But even like, me and 29, 20 years ago when I was growing up, it wasn't like that, you know? You don't cry, you don't show, you suck it up. If you get hit by a baseball in Little League, you don't cry, you just rub it and run down first base and suck it up.
Yeah.
So,
so how have you found it? Like, I mean, I know that the show, like you learn a lot about expressing yourself on the show and talking about your feelings. How have you found now that you like open up and share what you're feeling with friends, with family, and your relationship?
I feel there are times where I feel good about it, and there are times I don't because I want to be that guy. Like I want to be Superman, but we all know I'm not, and then everybody else isn't either. But so I think it's brought me closer in a lot of aspects with my friends and family, and specifically Ashley, being able to just like really talk through things. But at the same time, sometimes I feel guilt, and I'm sure that's what you guys were talking about, Dean, where it's like I'm almost burdening you with my shit. And I don't want to do that because when I'm with you, with my family and friends, like I just want to be happy. I always want to be happy. I don't want to have to be like, no, this bothers me and this sucks. And like, I don't like this.
But I'm going to remind you of what you said a few minutes ago, where when you're in a funk and then you talk to a family member or a friend, that then you guys end up laughing and you end up having a good conversation, and then you forget why you had felt bad or you work through it. And so even though it feels like, oh, when I'm with my friends and family, like I just want to be having a good time,
Totally.
But like opening up and sharing that can actually be part of you having a really good time.
Yeah. And I think also in our own head, we make such a big deal out of it when it's really nothing. Because like when friends do it to us or family members do it to us, like I barely remember.
Yeah.
Like, and because I think back upon that because I'm like, all right, if I'm just opening up to you and like making you listen to my nonsense and ridiculousness, like are there times when you do that to me? And then I like think back and I'm like, yeah, I guess that was the time. But I'm sure in their head that was like a big moment where like they felt bad and they didn't want to, like we said, burden me with their issues, but they did and they feel better about it. And so maybe in their head that was a big moment for them. And with me, it was just not insignificant, but like something I would never remember.
And it's mainly, I think, because it's just you genuinely care about that person. And so it's just, you're just acting as a good friend, how you genuinely feel to respond to that person.
Yeah.
So
I try to remind myself of that too, to be like, it's a big deal in your head, but it's not a big deal to anybody else. So if you talk about it, it's going to be fine. Like you're not, I think what it is too, is like, I'm always scared of letting my, projecting my insecurities onto other people. And so, specifically like dating, I'm certainly not a jealous guy, but I can be like, fuck that, don't talk to that guy, just like any other guy. And so, but even saying that in like a joking manner, I hate saying it because I don't want to like project my insecurities onto anybody else and make them think that I am a jealous guy because I don't want to be.
Yep. I think projection is something that gets slipped through the cracks so frequently.
Totally.
And it's really like, I know I've been in situations even on the show where it's like, you're projecting so many things out onto me right now. And it's really hard to work through that yourself, and B, to bring it to someone else's attention when it's happening. And I think it happens so frequently in our romantic relationships because oftentimes that person is somewhat of a, reflection of who we are in some ways, and a reflection of what we want, and a reflection of where we're insecure. But I think, for me, when I can pinpoint when I'm projecting is like, I'll say something and then I'll ask myself, wait, would they say the same thing about me?
Oh, totally. Exactly. right? And that's one of my biggest insecurities is that like, yeah, I totally agree. Where like, if I'm thinking about someone in a certain way, I'm always scared. Wait, are they thinking about me in the same fashion? Yeah, it's a real fear. And that's why I always advocate therapy. Because like, for some reason, when I go and talk about shit, I don't want to like burden my close friends and family with like all the things that I just want to get off my chest. So like, it's really good to have like that outlet to get it off my chest and be like, oh wow, I feel better. Like I don't need to, and that's not that I'm burdening them with them, but like there are some things that I just don't need to vent about with them, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, and I think there's, again, a different process to processing things in therapy versus with friends and family.
Totally.
So are you currently in therapy?
No, not right now.
Not now. Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe I should think about it. I mean, the good thing is the past few months have been so well that like I haven't had a lot to like really vent about.
But see, even I always say that it's never a bad time to go to therapy, because even when things are going great, you never know when things are going to get triggered. And it's like, I compare it to, you know, going to like your yearly physical at your doctor's office. Like nothing might be wrong, but this is just your annual thing you go do, or like filling up your gas tank. Like you don't wait until your car is broken down on the side of the road. Like you fill up on a regular basis, you know, just to ensure that things keep going smoothly.
Yeah, I like that analogy. I think it's true as well, because as soon as you start talking, then all these things kind of start coming out of like, you know what else bothers me? This, or you know what else bothers me? That. And then it leads to this. And then, you know, before you know it, you're into like a 2-hour therapy session. Yeah.
And I'm curious for you if you've thought about like a real life Superman. Like, you know, we've talked a little bit about this idealization of Superman and like wanting to be that, but also really rejecting the idea that you possess any of that. Yeah. And I'm curious how you then go about like viewing yourself and your identity as a man.
Yeah. Well, and if I'm saying a real life Superman, the closest thing that I've ever seen is definitely my dad.
Okay. Yeah.
Because he was just such a good father to both myself and my sister Shannon, who's getting married next week, which is very exciting. But he's the hardest working man I've ever met, and he just cares so much about his family and providing for them that he sacrificed so much of his own life for ours. And I sometimes am scared if I'm as brave as that. Because that does take bravery to do that. I mean, everything he does is for myself, for me, Shannon, and
very
my mom.
Very selfless.
So selfless. And
you worry that you aren't that.
Sometimes, of course, you know, because I'm very selfless with. It's hard though, because like we talked about, I think we're our own worst critics, and I'm like, I could always be doing more. I could always be doing better. And I would hope, and I think that if you would ask Ashley, she'd be like, you're out of your mind. You do so many things that are selfless. And I wonder if I ask my dad, who I think is the most selfless human being in the world, the same question that I ask myself sometimes, which is, could I be doing more? Should I be doing more? I think he'd say yes. And so that gives me comfort to know that someone that I view as amazing and incredible probably thinks the same way I do, where he's like, no, I could be doing more. I could always be doing something. I should be doing more for you guys. And like, there's nothing you could possibly do more for us, you know? But just to see the way he, like I said, his work ethic is unparalleled. And I mean, the guy he has like 4 different jobs and just wants to supply his family with the best possible, you know, life that they could possibly have. And even like with my sister's wedding, like he's been saving up for 2 years, working overtime as much as he possibly can, because he wants to pay for the wedding. Very traditional, and so he's just been saving up and working so hard, and so he's definitely
he's a real life Superman.
He really is, and I could ask anything from him, and he'd do it in an instant without even thinking, you know. Just like even little shit that just adds up so much over time, like airport rides, you know, how like What time's your flight? 3? All right, well, I'll pick you up at like 1:15. Dad, I can Uber. No, I'm going to drive you to the airport. And just that happens over and over again. And sometimes I fly to Boston. I was living in Rhode Island, Warwick, just south of Providence, which is like an hour drive to Boston sometimes. And you drive me in the morning and drive back, and it's just like that adds up. And like just anything, even, if I'd go over to the house in the morning, you want a coffee? I'll get you coffee. And just like, I know it sounds so insignificant, but it just means everything to me when it's like every time, never fails. He gets my mom a coffee every morning, without fail. And like, I've always believed that life is a collection of small moments that add up, because while large moments are great and they're incredible,
it really is all about the small things.
It's all about the small things for me. Like that just nobody thinks of, but mean everything to me.
And I think one thing for you to maybe think over and practice is acknowledging the small things that you do that mean everything to other people. Yeah.
And I do. And I try to make sure that I repeat those things so I never lose sight on, I can't think of a good example right now, but like there are a lot of small things that I'll do to make sure that like I keep doing those things because I know that they mean a lot to the person that I'm doing them for, but they also mean a lot to me. Like, because those are
it's
things.
It's an expression.
And those are the things that I'm doing for you that I don't want you to ever lose sight of, and you don't have to thank me every time I do it. But like, just to know, like, it's nice to know that you're there for somebody, and the way to express that, I don't know how to describe it, but like to show them that I'm here for you and I express it in this way.
So then have you done any work on like the 5 love languages? Do you know what yours are?
Yeah. So mine is,
your highest one.
My highest one. I remember. So, it was, oh Jesus. Hold on. What can you go over them?
Words of affirmation, acts of service, quality time, physical touch, gifts.
Oh, okay. So I know physical touch was up there for me. And because I just like, that's a big thing for me within a relationship. Anytime I'm not touching Ashley, I'm like, is something wrong? Is she mad at me? Yeah. Why are we not holding hands? And then quality time. It was either between quality time or words of affirmation. Because the other two were gifts and what?
Acts of service. Which that was what I was picking up.
Acts of service. Excuse me. Yeah. Acts of service was up there. It was either acts of service or quality time, I think, were my top two.
Because it sounds like a lot of what your dad does are acts of service.
Totally. Oh, he does. He makes sure like he'll like, and it's just the most endearing gift giving. Like I'm a diehard Patriots fan and big sports and Boston sports guy. And like he'll just be like, I remember a couple, like sometimes he'll be like, yeah, I saw this sweatshirt and it's like a $5 Patriot sweatshirt that's terrible and not comfortable. But he saw it and thought of me and wanted to buy it. And he, it's just the sweetest gift I could ever receive, is a $5 Patriot sweatshirt from my dad that he just got at Job Lot up the street.
But it showed that he was thinking of you.
Yeah, and he wanted to get it for me, because he thinks it's cool.
Now, when you reflect on him being your real life Superman and, this being your role model and reflecting on how you have more oftentimes done things out of fear than out of love. When you think about your dad doing these things, do you think that he's doing them out of fear or do you think he's doing them out of love?
He's definitely doing them out of love. But I think that that's a good question. I think he's doing them out of love. I'm trying to think of decisions that he makes. I mean, he definitely makes decisions based out of fear.
Yeah, we all do.
I can see that. Like, I can see him, like, I think as we get older, and we all get older, I think he has a fear of getting older. I really do. And so like, he's going to do everything to combat that. Like, he still is active. He umpires and refs and like all the high school. And he's very excited because I think he was the first person in Rhode Island to be certified in like all 5 major sports. So it was 6. I think it was like baseball, softball, football, soccer, basketball, and baseball.
Wow.
Yeah, he does it all. It's crazy. But I think that's a decision based out of fear. He loves doing it, but I think more so he's like, I'm refuse to get older. You know, he's battling time, so to speak. And you can see that like even with like as I get older and now I'm engaged and my sister's getting married and like there are like men in the family now. You know, he's not the only Superman. He's not the only Superman. So I think that's like, you know, anytime we go to dinner, he's paying. You know, and he's going to take us out to dinner and he's driving. And so I think those are decisions based out of fear because they're more like defense mechanisms. Be like, no, you're the kid. I'm the man. This is the way it's going. But I think a lot of the things that he does, he makes decisions based out of love. Like anytime he does things for my mom, like he gets my mom coffee every morning, calls her at lunchtime. Like those are things out of love because he just cares about them, make sure everything's okay. And, you know, and he'll just... Yeah, I think most of the decisions that he makes in his life now are based out of love. But it's interesting because you can't take the age aspect out of it. You know, I'm curious. As I get older, I find myself making more decisions based out of love than fear. But even, you know, last year, I could see a change in myself where like a lot of things that I did were just, I was scared to do them.
And how do you think you like pushed through that fear? To do things out of love versus out of fear. Yeah,
not to like, God, people are going to hate me, but most of it goes back to Ashley. You know, I saw somebody that I really loved and cared for, and I knew how I felt about her, and I was pushing away all these feelings and making excuses and not being the man that I wanted to be, but being the guy that I was, maybe settling for a lesser life, but, you know, I wouldn't have to face the, you know, fear of maybe not being good enough. I could always just... you know, push it away. And so it's like, I was like, kind of like the guy who never excelled at things, but could excel, but never did because I was afraid to fail, you know? So with Ashley, I don't know, it's a long story, but you know, she kind of started dating someone else and I got a very good glimpse of what my life was like without her. And it just, you know, and then all those thoughts came to my head when I was looking kind of introspectively and realizing, holy shit, you are terrified. You are a boy. You are still that little fat kid in high school who's afraid to get out of their comfort zone and is afraid to put themselves out there. Like sometimes it's so weird because I've been on so many reality TV shows, but there are times where I'm really scared to be seen. Yeah. You know, and that's why I think that was a big part of my entire Bachelor experience was that like I was more than willing. I wanted to go on these experiences because it's cool and like people were going to look up to me and like I was going to be on TV. But then I got there and I was still the same guy that I always have been, which was, you know, a lot of insecurities and fears. So I would always play it safe and never really step outside my comfort zone and just stay in my bubble and then like hope things would work out instead of really like pushing through. I think with Ashley, that's where like that might like kind of like the point I got where I could either do something about this and actually commit and fight for something. And even at the time, I remember before I expressed my feelings to Ashley, I was like, is this just out of jealousy? Like, is this truly what you want?
Out of fear that you are losing her as opposed to love for, I want this.
Totally. And like, even in the moment, I was like, I don't know. You know, I think I know, but what if I'm wrong? I'm 98% sure that this is love, but do you ever really know? And so I think that would be my biggest advice for everybody out there is that you're never going to really know. You know, you're always going to have that doubt. And so just try to push through it and battle and like fight for it and stick to your gut and like
take that risk.
Take a risk, you know? I think that was the biggest thing with my life is I was never taking risks. You know, I'd always play it safe. And it worked out and I had a great life. But I knew that there was a better one out there and I could see my better life gone with the person that I love more than anything being with somebody else, you know? I was like, what are you doing? And so that's when I was like, you either can go and fight for her, or you can continue living in your little bubble and go back to Rhode Island and be surrounded by the people you love, but maybe not be with the person you want to be with most.
Yeah.
And so that's why, like, yeah, I had to actively, really consciously battle through those doubts and insecurities and, like, you know, try to step out of my body for a second and be like, if you let this consume you, it's going to ruin everything.
Yeah.
So you can either be the guy that you were and, like, the confident guy, you know, before, like, this Bachelor stuff came out, and, like, you were a little in over your head, and just be the guy you were before. Like, Ashley and everybody else, they're just people.
Yep.
And so I had to, like, keep repeating that to myself and try to, like, stay as confident as possible and not compare myself to other people, and just be Jared and be in the moment and not think too much about it. And so that's what I did. And, like, it was almost like practice makes perfect, where I was, like, practicing doing it. And then the more I did it, the easier it became and the more comfortable I became in my own skin. And then, you know.
Now, were there, like, specific things that you were doing throughout that process, or was this all kind of internal? Like, did this happen through, like, journaling, or through talking to friends, or through, like, you know?
Oh, talking to my friends. Oh yeah, all the time.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of that.
Holy shit! My poor mom, my poor sister, and my poor friends Crystal and Kenny and Chad. God, I talk to them every day, and just. Yeah, I just talk to them every day. But those people in my life are very comforting. You know, I feel better just talking to them.
Yeah.
And so I would immediately feel better just being on the phone with them, because they're just comforting voice, and they're people that I love and care for and have always been happy around.
It sounds like they helped you kind of, like, dig deeper into some of these layers and get back in touch with maybe some of that confidence to actually push through and act out of love.
Totally. Oh, absolutely. They kind of, like, balanced myself, because I think sometimes I just get very overwhelmed, and I just, like we talked about, just make things a bigger deal in my head than they actually are. And I think, when I talk to them, like, they just bring me down a peg. You know?
It's kind of like a little bit of a reality check. And I think especially when you get into the whole world of the show, like, you really need to ground yourself in what your reality was outside of the show. Because it's so easy to lose track of that and to get, like, wrapped up in the Bachelor bubble. But giving yourself those reality checks and checking those irrational fears. Yeah. You know?
Totally. And I think a lot of people, when you use that expression, check yourself, they immediately associate it with checking your ego and, like, bringing you down because you think too highly of yourself. But I think a lot of times you need to check yourself.
Check those fears.
The fears and the negativity in your life. And, like, these things that you're making, that you're, like, almost connecting the dots when the dots aren't over there. And be like, no, she likes this person because of this. And, like, she hates me because of this. And they're like, you're insane. Just relax. Take a breath. Yeah. You're fine. Everything's okay. All you can do is control the things that you can control. And then everything else will fall into place. And you just have to be the you know, yes, you have to put effort in, and you have to, you know, vocalize how you feel and be there and show up. And, like, those are the things that you can control. You can only control your own actions. Yep. And so, you know, that's what I was, like, trying to do throughout that time, and still do, obviously. I mean, we battle with it every day of our lives. But certainly my friends and family, being able to talk to them and have that reality check of, like, you're good. You're good. You're fine. You're a human. You're a guy. Yeah. So is he. So is she. Everybody's just fine, you know? And if they think too highly of themselves, you probably don't want to be with them. Yeah. So that's kind of like what got me through that time.
It's very true.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, thank you for sharing that. And
of course.
I mean, thank you for sharing everything that you've shared and for being so reflective and honest. And some of the things that you've said, you know, people don't necessarily come right out with. Like, usually there are some things, you know, like with feeling like maybe you're not good enough, that, like, I kind of work people towards with what they're saying. Whereas, like, you've already been able to kind of, like, identify that and can say that there were times where you're like, yeah, like, I didn't think I was good enough. I didn't think that I mattered enough. And so it shows that, like, you really have done a lot of this reflective work, a lot of, like, introspective work to not only be a better version of yourself, but to make sure that the connections in your life are deeper and stronger because you're coming to them in a better place.
Totally. And that's what thank you. I appreciate you saying that. And I mean, who needs therapy when I can just come on your podcast? And I try to do that, and I continue to try to do that. And like, it's hard because, like we talked about, we're just humans, and we continue to make mistakes and like say the wrong thing or do the wrong thing. You're like, no, you know this. You know this. What are you doing? And so, but it's a battle that everybody has, and that's life. You know, things aren't black and white like we talked about. Like a lot of what, you know, all the magic happens, and where life lives is in that gray area. And so,
absolutely. And we talked about that on your podcast.
Yes.
That you do with Dean and Vanessa.
Yep.
Help I Suck at Dating.
Yep. So I have a podcast called Help I Suck at Dating. I co-host with Dean Ungler and Vanessa Grimaldi, who you're very good friends with. Both are from the Bachelor franchise, and that's over at iHeartRadio. So definitely check that out if you're interested. I hope that I don't suck that bad anymore.
Yeah.
I think that's a question more so for Ashley than myself. But but it's definitely a fun podcast, and we talk about dating trends and all different topics within the dating world, and have a lot of guests on there, not only from The Bachelor, some from The Bachelor, but also just a lot of health coaches, dating gurus, so to speak. So it's pretty cool. It's a good time, and I enjoy doing it.
Yeah, you guys should definitely check it out. I'll put a link to the episode that I was on in the episode notes description.
Yeah, and thank you for coming on and being so open about everything that's happened in your recent life. And certainly I can't imagine how overwhelming it is. But day
by day.
Day by day, exactly. That's all you can do is... actually, I was talking to this guy, Gregory Barrett, who was a guest on the podcast, and he actually was a co-writer on Sex and the City.
Okay.
And then he also wrote He's Just Not That Into You. Oh. That's like...
Such a good... I love that movie
Such a good
much.
one, right? When I found out who he was, I was like, holy crap, you wrote that book?
I want to go be friends with him.
He's awesome. He's probably, within relationships, the most knowledgeable man I've ever met in my entire life. And he's been married for 18 years. Wow. And him and his wife, Amira. And I remember asking him, like, what is it... like... tell me how an 18-year marriage works. Like, what's your guys' secret? He's like, honestly, man, I'm just married one day at a time. And that's all you do. It's just like, today I'm married, and we're going to get through it and figure it out and have the best day possible. And then tomorrow's a new day. It's like, that's a great way of looking at it. I love that. I love that, too. It's so hard as human beings, though, because what are we always doing? We're always planning our next step, planning our next trip.
We're either thinking... way in the past, or we're thinking way in the future, and it takes us totally away from being in the present and actually like enjoying our lives together.
Totally. So yes, be in the present.
Yes,
best as possible.
Definitely. And thank you so much. If people want to like reach out to you, obviously they can find you on the podcast, and then also your Instagram. Yeah.
So my Instagram is my name at Jared Haibon. And then on Twitter, mine is, it's my last name, then first name. It's at Haibon_Jared. I don't know why I did that.
Just wanted to switch it up a little bit.
Apparently, I think, because I created my Instagram and Twitter at the same time because I didn't have either before the show.
Oh, wow.
And then I got off the show. I'll never forget, I was at an Irish bar in Warwick, Rhode Island called Fat Bellies, and I was with my friends, and it was like before the show was about to air. And my friend Crystal, she was like, you need to get an Instagram. You need to get an Instagram. I was like, I don't know. I don't, because they put the fear of God in you. And they're like, you can't have social media, blah, 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 blah. So I was like, I don't want to get in trouble. And then I saw online... that Ben had one, Ben Higgins. And I was like, oh, shit. If he's got one, I'm totally making one. So I remember making my Instagram and Twitter, and I must have been like, oh, well, if my Instagram is at Jared Haibon, I can't have the same handle for my Twitter. Like, just being an idiot.
Yeah.
But, so yeah, my Twitter is at Haibon_Jared. My Instagram is at Jared Haibon.
Love it. Love it. You guys should definitely check him out over there. And thank you guys so much for tuning in. Feel free to leave us reviews on iTunes, and you can also send us topic suggestions or questions that you have at ask.letstalkaboutit@gmail.com. And thank you so much again, Jared, for coming in and
Thank you, Taylor. This was great.
Yeah. Talk to you guys next time.
This podcast is brought to you by Wave Podcast Network. Check out all of our shows, including the Brain Candy Podcast, I Don't Get It, Babes and Babies, Coffee Convos, and Let's Talk About It.